So my name is Edel Coen. I'm a principal at Molten Ventures. We are a London-headquartered pan-European investment firm, investing from Series A onwards. And among other sector focuses, we spend a lot of our time investing in deep tech companies and in healthcare companies. So I'm delighted to welcome one of our portfolio CEOs from the Molten portfolio, Eric Mays, CEO of Endomag. So before you get started on your intro,
Sure.
Eric, the crowd might be interested to hear that you've got 25 years and counting experience in commercializing and then in scaling deep tech businesses. Tell us more about Endomag. I mean, this is a technology that has really gone through the stages of growth from a deep tech business to a true success story. And it'd be great to hear a little bit more about what the technology is, what it does, and why it's so meaningful, and why does it touch the lives of hundreds of thousands of breast cancer patients today.
Absolutely don't. So I think that point of touching hundreds of thousands of lives and continuing to grow is really one of the things that drives our organization. And we realized last year that basically every 5 minutes, a new patient, literally around the world in over 45 countries where we're active, is treated with our technologies.
Wow.
And that pace is just continuing to grow. And so that's a huge driver for really anyone in health tech, the fact that you're making a difference there at the patient's bedside. But one of the things that makes this really most meaningful is increasing the accessibility of the best standard of care. So conventionally, I'll tell you a little bit about what we do, but conventionally in our space, customers can only get the best standard of care if they've got access to radioactive isotopes, or if there's a hospital that has a nuclear medicine program involved. And we remove that barrier so that physicians and patients can get as broadly as possible minimally invasive surgery and good surgical guidance, and that's one of our big drivers. So about what we do. So we replace nuclear medicine with some magnetic materials, hence the mag and Endomag, and we have a system that allows surgeons to locate tumors or lymph nodes that would be implicated in the spread of cancer.
Amazing. So it sounds like you guys are well on the path to success. But as you know, and I know, and many of the folks in the audience know, commercializing deep tech is extremely difficult and can take a very long time. Could you talk to us specifically about that stage of the journey for Endomag and some of the challenges that you came across getting the technology from the lab, if you like, to market?
Absolutely. So, like any early stage company, early in its life, we had lots of near-death moments.
Sure.
About half of them were related to cash. The other half are related to regulations. So we're in a very highly regulated space in medical devices. I assume other companies like in fintech have regulators to deal with. But that's one of the challenges that keeps us from being like David's company and being able to deliver revenues and profitability right from the start. Is you have to go through a regulatory environment. You have to deliver clinical evidence before you can convince customers to take on your devices. And so I think there are two moments that were particularly challenging. One was, so we have a system, a surgical guidance system that's kind of a detector that the surgeon waves with the patient to locate the tissue. And we got our CE mark in Europe for that in 2010. And no sooner had we received that letter through the post than I got a call from the one European distributor of a material that we would detect, a magnetic tracer. And they said, listen, we're stopping manufacture, and the supply chain is going to run out in 3 months. So we had basically half a product and nothing to do. So I've had a lot of supply chain challenges over the last few years, but nothing beats having nothing.
That's a hairy moment.
That was a very hairy moment. And of course, our investors were biting their fingernails and wondering what would come next. And so that really launched into the busiest year of my life, where I ran around the world trying to source a material that met our design requirements. And then one of the big challenges was, from a regulatory point of view, those materials were at this sort of gray area for regulators between what defines a device and what defines a drug. And if we came down on the drug side, that would mean many millions of additional dollars in clinical evidence and many, many years to get that approved, and it would have instantly killed the company. So we were able to come to an agreement with the European regulators that actually the way our material worked was that as a device. And that helped unlock some cash for our investors and put us on a pathway that by the end of that year, after getting all of the appropriate documentation and manufacture in place and having our audit, we were able to get our approval at the end of that year. It wouldn't be possible in today's regulatory environment. The European regulations have changed quite a bit since when we started. And that's one of the big challenges for early stage, particularly in health tech companies, is the regulatory environment changes almost from year to year and from territory to territory.
So some scary moments at the edge of the cliff, but
Indeed.
we wouldn't be here if you hadn't navigated them so well and got through the other side. And then so you've created the technology, you've managed to navigate the regulatory, let's say, hurdles. You've brought it to market. Now the scaling piece, I think, is something that Endomag has executed extremely well on. Could you talk to some of the things that you really got right at that point in the journey?
Sure. I think one, maybe talking about the scale of the scale.
Yes.
So prior to this year, all of our sales have been through distribution, or in particular strategic partners that we've aligned ourselves with, and that they would do the selling. And partly the reason for that is in med tech, it's always been the sort of orphan child of a lot of life sciences, because a lot of med tech companies had promised a lot and not delivered, and so there's always kind of a distaste for the sector. And we found it difficult to raise money to build sales organizations on a global basis. And so our only route to market was through partnering. But this year we've kind of unwound that and we've started going direct. But through that partnership with a lot of these organizations, we've helped now access over 45 countries. We've got about 1,200 different customers in all of those spaces, and we've treated over 350,000 patients to date. So there's that scale, but now that we are going direct, the organization is sort of in subscale, and so now we've got sales teams, we've got all the infrastructure to help and support them, and so we've grown very rapidly during the pandemic, and the biggest challenge that I've seen is one of communication. It's not just can everyone understand how their role supports the overall objective, but you've got all these different departments and they're growing, and are they interacting with one another efficiently, and how do you keep everyone motivated and understanding how what they do affects how the organization does. And so we've, not that we've solved all of these problems, but some of the things we've done outside of having regular town halls like many companies do is set up outside of our executive leadership team, have a broader leadership team that has representation across the organization to be able to talk about strategy and help the broader team understand in their own minds and ask questions to understand the strategy so they can explain it to the rest of the organization. And therefore, everyone can get a better sense of how what they're doing affects the how. And North Star metrics, things like numbers of patients that we treat, these are great, but you still need people being able to talk to one another. You don't want one department feeling like, in terms of achieving that objective, they might be being hindered by another department, and so getting into interdepartmental communication is critical. So we don't have offices, very open plan, but also sort of open desk. So we encourage everyone to stop by and really communicate with one another. But it's still a daily challenge. When we have staff surveys, someone will say, "I don't understand what the mission is." So there's still a lot to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about it that way. So the scaling is often sort of lumped into one concept, but actually that's interesting. There are two concepts: scaling commercially and then scaling organizationally.
Absolutely.
But again, I think you've done a good job executing on that, and you've grown what to your 120 now?
120, I think maybe 130 by the end of next month, and 150 by the end of the year, which is appropriate for where we're at this stage.
No, it's super interesting. So that's been an amazing journey. We talked about some of the kind of waypoints to where Endomag is today. What kind of comes next for you guys? How do you think about the world in 5 years, 10 years? What does it look like? Where does Endomag fit into that paradigm?
Well, I think the foremost aspect is we think about being able to treat tens of thousands and eventually, millions more patients. And so that's a big driver for us. It has that side effect that there's a lot of revenue growth and profitability that comes along with that. And speaking of that, we're just teasing profitability now. The Q1 was profitable. We didn't expect that. I think Q2 and 3 will dip down, but later this year is when we expect it to go EBIT positive. And that allows us then to double down on our growth, really to look at leveraging our technology platform that we have alongside what we call our brand platform. So we've got a really good identity with our customers and belief in our products that the whole of the organization is aligned with. And using that position, we can leverage what we have in our technology platform to go beyond breast cancer, which is our primary aim now, into things like lung cancer or other indications. And it allows us also, in doubling down, to not just look at the organic developments that we can do in terms of new products. So this year we're bringing out a whole, the next generation of our system alongside some additional consumables that make life better for surgeons and patients, but also be able to do some inorganic activity and look at other groups that are involved in helping patients in the breast cancer space, increasing accessibility of the best standard of care. And so as as the years roll forward, you'll see us growing within that brand platform, but then ultimately expanding the technology platform into other spaces too.
Amazing. And I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, right? So you sort of own your own destiny, you continue on that scaling journey, and ultimately the impact is with, patients, right?
Yes.
So this becomes more of a go-to in other indications, and that's only ever going to be a good thing. So we are super proud to work with you as part of our portfolio, and the future is bright. So thank you for sharing your story with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
Edel.
listening.
Thank you.